Hi, I've showed you my wildflower meadow before. I want to talk more about what it takes to install and maintain one and what I've learned along the way. So I started putting in small wildflower patches 3 years ago, and this one here is my biggest one yet. It's about 70 feet by 30 feet, and I installed it in two sections. So the very bottom here and the very top are actually 2 years old, and the big middle section is from this spring. So the first step that I had to do, and this is the most important part, is clear the existing growth down to the root. And I've done this little experiment 2 years ago when I had a brush fire that killed part of my lawn. I immediately put down some seeds to see what's going to happen. And what happened is they did come up that year, but as the grass regrew back from the roots, it completely smothered them, so they never came back the second year. So if you want a meadow that keeps coming back every year, you really want to do this step good. And I would never use any chemicals. So what I did is basically smothered it by covering it up with cardboard boxes in the small sections and using a black tarp, plastic tarp on this big section. And I just bought it from Amazon, and it's 20 feet by 30 feet. So I was really able to get all of this done in one big section. And if you don't want to buy plastic, you really can do it with the cardboard. Just do it in sections, and you can do up to two a year because the best time to plant them is fall or spring. So you could be smothering in the winter and in the summer, and then planting in the fall and spring. And the biggest difference between planting in the fall or spring is that some plants, some seeds, need cold period in order to sprout. So if you put them down in the spring, it's fine. They're just going to be sitting in the ground though until the next spring, basically. So the fall is, I think, preferable. Just keep in mind if you're doing it in the fall and you're in an area that has no snow coverage, that the birds will be eating your seeds. So definitely want to overseed if you're planting in the fall. The next step is exhausting your seed bank. And the seed bank is basically all the seeds that have accumulated over the years. And I'm going to show you a little close up of this bee. And so I didn't do this part, and I really would if I had to do it over again, because I've had some Japanese stilt grass here, and it's still coming up here. As you can see, here's the little troublemaker here. So what I'm gonna have to do now is basically mow it in a month when before it seeds again. And the exhausting of the bank is really simple. It's basically you're smothering and covering, then uncover it, let it regrow, and then smother it again. And you do it until basically there's no more coming up. So the last part is the fun part, and that's putting down your seeds. Now, where did I get my seeds? I really like American Meadows and Prairie Nursery. They have really great regional mixes, and they will be, for Northeast, Southwest, etc. Just make sure you're reading the contents of them because sometimes they can have some plants. For example, for my area, there is a lot of black-eyed Susan in them, and they will all have it. And I really like black-eyed Susan, but the issue is that it's a really fast grower and a rapid spreader. So in a meadow situation like this, where I have a really small meadow, right? So I don't really want it to be taking over. So if I would have to do it again, I would probably just buy the seeds separately and make my own mix. So important part about making your own mix is making sure you're including annuals as well as perennials. And that's because the perennials will take 2 to 3 years to really establish and start growing, while the annuals will sprout right away. And they will basically work as a cover crop to keep out any weeds. And you really want to do this and have them. And also consider when you're planting them in the spring, make sure you don't mow them before winter because they need to reseed themselves for the next year. Now let's talk about maintenance. So what do I do for maintenance? Basically, I only mow them when there is something growing in that I don't like this Japanese stilt grass. And but I do weed them. And a small, small meadow like this, you can really weed by hand. And the things I'm taking out are a lot of times they're actually natives. Like this year, it was a big year for fleabane. There was just fleabane coming up everywhere. And while I like it in other parts of my lawn, I really don't want it in my meadow patch. So I would just pull it, as I see it coming up, I just pull it out. And that's really it. You never have to water these. They're really drought tolerant. So that's really the good part. So for the winter, a lot of people will want to mow them. But if you want them to be spreading more, if you want the annuals to come back next year, you really want them to reseed first. And also, I let it stand over the winter because A, it's a lot easier, and B, it provides food for the birds in the winter and also a nice coverage for small mammals, like field mice or voles. And why would I want those? Well, because there are owls and birds of prey that come here in the winter and they feed. So that's really food for them too. And another question is, do you want to add native grasses into your mix? So I didn't use them in my small, really small patches because I think they would be really overwhelming. But I did use them in this big patch and they are perennial, so they will take a couple years to establish. But I used a little blue stem and a red panicum. And what it adds is really erosion and weed control. They also are food for birds as well as support for any tall flowers. For example, if you have any, sunflowers in the mix, the grasses will really be a nice support for them because they tend to fall over. And what I really love about these wildflower meadows is that in every season they look different, and also every year they look totally different, especially if you're letting them reseed themselves. You'll be surprised every year about the colors. It's always like a different painting. So that's it about the wildflower meadow. I hope you enjoyed my video and thanks for watching.